The Japanese Human Experiments, Unit 731. Your school taught you about World War II, but not this. Not the secret laboratory where doctors became monsters, where surgery was done without anesthesia, where screams were recorded like data. And trust me, this story only gets darker. Picture this: Manchuria, 1936. A remote compound surrounded by snow, silence, and barbed wire. No signboards, no witnesses. Locals whispered one name: the factory. But it wasn't a factory. It was a hell built by men in white coats. Japan called it Unit 731, officially the Epidemic Prevention and Water Purification Department. Sounds harmless, right? Twist. It was actually the world's most brutal human experimentation center, a place where over 3,000 prisoners were dissected alive, frozen to death, infected with plague, grenades tied to their bodies, all in the name of science.
Now you are our property.
Imagine entering as a prisoner. They took your name, your clothes, your humanity. You weren't a person anymore. You were Maruta, meaning log. Logs to be cut open, logged data, disposable. Inside the concrete corridors, lights buzzed like insects. Guards laughed, bored. Somewhere, a metal door slammed. Someone screamed, suddenly cut short. No one asked why. Asking questions meant joining the test subjects. Doctors walked calmly, taking notes. A nurse sharpened instruments, not for surgery, for vivesection. No anesthesia. Why? They said pain interfered with results. A prisoner restrained on a table, chest rising fast, eyes wide. Scalpel touches skin. The doctor's voice cold. Observe organ reaction in real time. They cut. The man screams until his throat bleeds, then quiet, either from shock or because his vocal cords tear. Another room, a woman, 7 months pregnant. They infect her with syphilis to observe fetal transmission. Later, they cut open her womb while she's still breathing to watch how the baby reacts. No one leaves Unit 731 alive. Dead bodies burned in furnaces. Ashes mixed with coal dust, dumped into rivers. History washed away, literally. But here's where you'll question humanity. Researchers competed to design, quote, the most lethal plague strain, not to cure it, to weaponize it. But the worst part? Everything you just heard is still only the beginning. Because Unit 731 created the most horrifying biological weapons ever released. And soon, they would unleash them on real cities. But this next part, this is where the nightmares begin. Snow piled high outside the walls of Unit 731. But inside, warm rooms glowed with yellow lamps, reflecting off steel tools. Not tools of healing, tools of studying suffering. Guards dragged new prisoners every morning. Mothers, farmers, children. Anyone suspected of disloyalty. Many were innocent, caught just to fill research quotas. A young man was tied to a post. Doctors injected him with the bubonic plague. Yes, the same disease that once wiped a third of Europe. They watched. His skin blackened, veins turned dark like ink under parchment. He begged for water, but his throat closed. Eyes bulged. Within days, he died. Yet his body was not burned immediately. They opened him, warm, chest still twitching, to examine organs while disease was active. One scientist joked, "Plague is easier to study when the subject is fresh." Another room, Frostbite experiment. Outside, they forced prisoners to stand naked in -20-degree snow. Hands plunged into icy water. Wind howled like wolves. Frost crawled up their skin. Fingers turned white, then gray, then black like charcoal. When frozen solid, doctors hit the limbs with sticks. If it sounded like wood, experiment successful. Then they thawed the limb in boiling water, watching skin peel like wet paper. Many collapsed from shock. Those who survived the freezing were dissected alive. Imagine that cold, that pain, that silence after screaming stops. Down the hall was the pressure chamber, a metal sphere, thick doors sealed tight. Prisoners strapped inside. Scientists increased pressure slowly. Lungs collapsed, eyes burst, blood sprayed from ears like fountains. They wrote notes calmly, like students observing chemistry reactions. Some experiments were worse. They tied grenades to prisoners' bodies, placing others 1 meter, 2 meters, 5 meters away. Then, boom, they measured how far flesh flew, human meat on snow, notes taken on shrapnel penetration. A woman begged, "Please, let me see my son one last time." They ignored her. She died screaming. Wait, you think this is extreme? It gets even darker. Unit 731 didn't just test inside walls, they tested on entire villages. Planes flew over Chinese towns. From above, bombs dropped. Not explosions, but ceramic bombs filled with plague-ridden fleas. Fleas infected with cholera, anthrax, typhoid. The villagers thought it was just dust at first. Children played in it. Weeks later, streets full of corpses, black sores, vomiting blood. Whole towns vanished. Historical estimates say over 200,000 civilians died from these biological attacks. Imagine a mother digging graves until her hands bled. No priests, no proper funerals, just fear. But here's the part history almost never says. Scientists celebrated. They considered mass death as field data, ice cold, pens moving. A diary entry recovered later read, "Field experiments successful. Infection rate exceeded expectation." Successful. Humans reduced to statistics. One prisoner remembered being locked in a room full of X-ray machines. They turned them on for hours. His skin burned from inside. Hair fell out in clumps. Teeth loosened. He begged for death. They denied him because they needed to, quote, observe long-term radiation decay. Another, forced to drink seawater instead of food. Kidneys shut down, tongue cracked like dry soil. Some had limbs amputated and sewn back on the wrong side, left arm on right shoulder, or reattached to legs, just to see how nerves react. When wounds rotted, they scraped away tangerine with dull metal, no painkillers. If the subject passed out, they slapped until awake. Pain was the research. This wasn't science. This was cruelty wearing a lab coat. The most disturbing truth is still ahead. Because when the war ended, the doctors were supposed to hang for crimes against humanity. Justice was close. But then, something happened that shocks even historians. The US offered a deal. Freedom in exchange for research files. All the torture notes, weapon data, disease results. America wanted the knowledge, and Unit 731 leaders walked free. They went home, lived normal lives. Some even became professors, hospital directors, pharmaceutical executives, teaching medicine, healing patients. Imagine that. Hands that once held organs of screaming victims, now shaking hands with students. The world forgot, or pretended to. Victims' families never received justice. No trial, no apology, just silence. But before you think this nightmare ends here, there is one more secret. A truth that was buried, denied, and hidden from global history books. Because Unit 731 didn't disappear. It evolved. And what survivors later claimed is the darkest part of all. The war was ending, Russian troops advanced. Fear spread inside Unit 731's walls. Not fear of death, but fear of exposure. Inside the compound, papers burned day and night. Smoke rose from chimneys carrying evidence like ghosts. Doctors rushed, not to save lives, but to erase crimes. Research logs thrown into furnaces, bodies doused in Vaseline. Rooms scrubbed though bloodstains refused to leave, as if the walls remembered. Witnesses recalled a smell, sweet, rotten, chemical. The smell of burning human records. Then came the final order. Eliminate all remaining subjects. No survivors, no stories, no truth. Prisoners were marched outside at gunpoint. Many couldn't walk. frostbitten legs dragged behind. Some were children, trembling, holding each other. Machine guns were raised. Snow fell slow, soft, almost peaceful. A cruel contrast. Shots cracked like thunder. Bodies dropped like broken dolls. Blood melted snow into red slush. Silence. Those not shot were poisoned. Those not poisoned were burned alive in storage warehouses. One nurse later confessed in an interview, voice shaking even decades later. We heard them pounding on the doors when the flames started. We pretended not to hear. She cried on camera. The government never charged her with anything. When Allied forces arrived, Unit 731 looked empty, like a ghost town. But underground tunnels told another story. Rusty tools, chains on walls, rooms blackened by fire, pieces of bone stuck in drains. A US soldier wrote in his diary, "This place smelled like death trying to speak." But the world would not hear death speak, not yet.